Right
Maybe.
now.
Right
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
because it's time to write now.
All right. Welcome, my friends, to another WriteNow Writers Group meeting session number 29, as we are trying to get into the writing mindset today. We're seeing what writing craziness is going on. And yeah, we're going to see what conversations we can get into. So for those of us who join us on our normal weekly writers groups, today is going to be a little different. Our WriteNow Writers Group is going to only be roughly about an hour. We're going to get in some writers conversation, and then we'll hop straight into a longer writing sprint. So that way we could try to be a little bit productive today. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I know, maybe. And the reason we're going for an hour is because at the hour mark, I'm going to be hopping into our YouTube channel members critique group. So definitely make sure, for anyone who wants to join, if you want to join the critique group, hit that join button down below if you want to get access. It's actually a great experience if you want to share your story and get feedback with the group. So definitely join. I just dropped that in the chat. And that's what we got going on today. Welcome. I'm Kaufman. I'm on a mission to put a dragon on all the problems of the world.
Yes.
And who are you guys?
Chat Soul. I've been working on my children's series folklore stories lately, so.
Of which that folklore story, the wolf story, was really good. For anyone who missed
I already finished the other one,
Saturday.
and I'm on the third one now.
I know, that was such a good one. For anyone who missed the story and critique show, we read Soul's folklore story, and it was really good. What a great origin story for wolves. It's really cool. What about you, Crazy? Who are you?
My name is Crazy Root Beer. And I, earlier this morning, have just gotten done with my 10th book, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I already have planned, obviously, 3 more books of another book series I've been working on since the very beginning, Heavenly Warriors. And these 3 books are going to start a domino effect, and it starts things where things are going to get pretty dark, and these 3 books are going to happen technically at the exact same time.
Oof. Well, that sounds like you're making some awesome progress, Crazy. You're inspiring me over here. I feel like I've been stuck on Scarecrow for the past week. I hit the major milestone and finished Act 1, and then I got feedback. That's right. That was last writers group. You guys gave me some feedback on that Scarecrow chapter, and then I realized that this next chapter I'm on, I have to rewrite. I'm like, oh God, I just don't feel like rewriting it, but it has to be done. So I've been dragging my feet, that and being busy. So we'll see. I need to just push myself to move forward. Otherwise, I'll be stuck here. Scarecrow will never be finished. So we'll see what I can get into. How are you doing here in the chat? Welcome everyone. Megan, good to see you here. Lynn, what's up? ML, welcome. I can tell it looks like the weather is on everyone's mind. Lynn, you're like, it's finally snowing here in Alaska. ML is 6 Fahrenheit this morning at my house, only 16 Fahrenheit right now. Crazy, you're here in the underworld, so I don't know what the temperature might be over there. Maybe hotter. Lynn's like, it's around 30 where I'm at, but I'm temperature rainforest Alaska, not tundra Alaska. I just assume Alaska is like freezing everywhere. That's interesting. Let's see. What's up, Bob? You're like 16 in Appleton, Wisconsin. I want to say WI is Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, hopefully I know my states. Megan's like 18 degrees here in Milwaukee. And then very, very hot over in California as the fires are continuing to affect Southern California and Los Angeles. So, of course, anybody who's in Los Angeles, thoughts go out to you, and hoping that the fires will continue to be contained and put under control. So very, very cool. It sounds like weather is definitely on everyone's mind today. How does weather play a part in your stories? I'm curious. For me, that Scarecrow, weather plays a huge adverse effect on the role and the world building of the story itself. The weather is not, it's definitely not kind. I have rainstorms where it's like raining fire from the sky. We have like thunder. We have like thunderstorms where it's shooting thunder from the ground. We have like tornadoes that people with fog that does it's not very my world, the climate has definitely shifted and affected the state of the world over time. And it's kind of like feels like it's leading towards an end time apocalypse vibe.
Jeez.
Yep,
Surprisingly,
that's
Pirates didn't have much weather in it.
Mhm.
Part of it might be the way I've designed the world. It's mostly water, and seasons can react differently on the ocean than they do on land. And
Mhm.
since the world, instead of 70% water, is like 90% water, mainly it's just storms. And even
Mm,
then, there's not that many. There's a major storm in book 1, and then another in book 2.
mhm.
But it's the same location both times. A
Oh, okay.
massive
And
hurricane
is it
front.
that like that area is affected by storms, or are you
Pretty
using it more
much.
for like a storytelling device?
It's the northern waters are known for their hurricanes, and the
Okay.
only known storms aside from those in the books are the storm belt. It's
Mhm.
from the North Pole to the South Pole. It is a giant band 500 miles across of nothing but maelstroms.
Mhm.
Other than that, I haven't done much with storms in that, but my fan fiction storms play a big part in them.
Yeah, and I was like, I can tell. I feel like weather gets used for a lot of different effects. I'm always curious, and this is continued question of the community. Do you use your weather effects for world building to show like what the world's like, or do you use it to directly affect the plot and the characters? Like somebody's on a ship and they get hit by a thunderstorm, like that could kill off the characters, right? Especially if it's a pirate-based story, right? But if somebody's on in the 21st century and they're at home, thunderstorm may not be the end of the world. So I think it's interesting how different weather conditions can affect different things. I'd love to hear how everyone's using it. By the way, Bob, welcome. I saw you hopped in here. You're like, got to stick together. Megan mentioned our Discord. Bob, you're of course more than welcome to join us in the Discord. It's linked down in the YouTube description below. And we just added bots. We just added role bots. So now you can actually choose what your genre of writer you are. It's actually really cool. It's a really cool thing. And everybody, anytime you post messages in the Discord, you now level up and gain experience. So it's a kind of cool. We got an XP thing. There's a role. There's a role that I'll see if anybody is able to achieve to get a certain role with the XP. Lynn was saying, in my necromancy series, I use weather to show time of year and time passing. Yeah, that's not surprising. I could see how weather almost would be part of like the seasons, maybe seasonal for passing of time. That's actually a common one. What about you, Crazy? Do you ever use weather at all in your stories?
Honestly, I've never even thought about it. Never even mentioned the time of year it is, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one of those, you can call it laziness or whatever, because I'm just too lazy to put every single detail. But in my mind, just to help everybody with maybe both series or whatever, in my mind, they pretty much take place um, around spring, summertime, because those are my favorite times of years. So, you know,
Mm,
uh, I've never done any snow thing, any lightning, thunderstorm, anything like that. But you got me thinking about it, though. Thank you.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I think what's interesting is there's so many different world effects that you can really use with your story. I think weather is just one of those tools for the state of the world. Um, it has me think about with things like with my characters, like things that obviously we need to survive. But with Scarecrow and all them, I think about like, okay, do I show the passing of day versus night? Am I showing the passing of time on a day by day level? If a character is in like a fantasy story and am I showing the passing of time on day by day, week by week, month by month? Does it matter? I also think about like food. People got to eat, but if eating's not part of the story, like if it doesn't really matter, I probably still have to mention it at some point. Otherwise, it might be at a believability factor if you've gone through this whole month of a story and you never talk about them having food. But like
Yeah.
we rely on food every single day. Like we need food to eat, unless your character is a non-human character. Like, yeah, I don't know. I was like,
Vampire.
I think what was that?
Vampire.
Vampire, right? Then you're eating something entirely different, right? But that's also a little easier because the vampires traditionally are so focused on blood and having to kill to survive that it's almost built into their character dynamic. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I
Yeah,
know
I'm
with
trying
food, I usually use it as kind of like a there's like so far I haven't written anything that actually revolves around food, but I will have my characters go and like get supplies. So they talk about food in that case, making sure they have, the right things. Arat, one of the characters, is mentioned as the cook, so food is mentioned with him occasionally. And then there's times where the characters are sitting together and they might be eating, but the whole part is centered around what they're talking about, with the food being mentioned just in the aspect of they're eating. But I don't go into detail with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if it's always necessary unless like the plot is, unless the plot or unless the reader needs to know what they're eating and there's something important about it, like somebody's eating food and it's poisoned, right? Obviously, if that's a plot thing, you're going to need to know that. Same in the line of food, sleeping. Do you guys reference your characters getting sleep?
Yep.
And we know, and this is interesting because I think about it when I get less than the amount of sleep that I need per night, I feel it the next day. But then we think about our characters get put into these crazy situations where they're probably living off adrenaline most of the time, unless they're in a magical world. But sleep is important, and I'm curious if we ever, if you guys ever touch upon it. I feel like it's like one of those like necessities, but I don't know if it's things that get overlooked in a lot of stories or not.
I use it quite frequently, honestly, for two reasons. One, my characters tend to go through a lot of trauma, so they're just they're always in some kind of position where they need to get rest of some kinds. There's multiple times where Kasai ends up having to go to his room and he ends up sleeping, or he's mentioned that he was sleeping. Other characters in my fan fictions, sleep is mentioned like when they're getting ready for bed or when they get out of bed. I had a romances, so I've written romance before, but it's not like the center story. It's like part of the main story. It's just kind of like a side note. Multiple times I've had a character, one of my favorite ones that I wrote was actually my first fan fiction. He woke up he got woke up abruptly by somebody interrupting him and where he woke up freaked out after he realized what he had done and then raced off, but it's mentioned that he was sleeping beforehand.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Even when I think about, I think one of the excerpts we read of your story on one of the critique shows, I think it was a sleeping scene. I'm pretty sure it was a sleeping scene. I think it might have been one of the fan fictions. I don't remember, but I remember it started off with the character sleeping or waking up from sleep.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised by that. And then I can tell in the chat, there's kind of like a mix with temperature with like, all right, so with weather, food, sleeping. Things that I just think get overlooked, but I'm not sure unless it's built into the story. Lynn said, sleep and the concept of rest is hugely related to my characters in my books. Right. And I think this is different, right? I think when sleep and food is integral to a character's ability or power, obviously it can't be overlooked. I'm interested if like, all right, what if it's not part of their not integral for the character's ability or power? Then how do you still make it reference it without forgetting about it? ML's like in Deadcaster, the characters eat in college cafeteria and have lots of conversations while dining. And that's another thing. I feel like dining food scenes can tend to be like tend to be used as like a passive scenes where like big crazy stuff just happened. All right, slow scene, they're gonna eat and recover. I'll see that sometimes. Megan said, yep, sometime in the fan fiction, a few chapters, Upsleep will come up with Aizen having to deal with sleep and rest after a long day, and bonding with Min and MK when they establish a slumber party. ML's and coffee at a coffee shop with lots of conversation or them running into each other. Yeah, I could totally see that. But I'm kind of curious because I think these are just the things on my mind. Soul, Crazy, or anyone in the chat, what do you think are story elements that writers tend to overlook in storytelling?
I think eating is one of the biggest things.
What was that?
I think eating is actually one of the biggest things because when it's not integral, I honestly cannot think of how often I really see that.
Eating, yeah, and I think that's kind of why it's coming to mind because I'm like, yeah, I feel like it probably has been. I'm gonna throw this in the YouTube chat. What storytelling elements are overlooked?
And this also might actually just be dependent on the story itself, but characters' downtimes. If there's slow moments where the character's not going through something major, I notice I do this myself sometimes, is the character's not really doing anything, like they're not even making any motions. But it's like, do they have a hobby? Do they have something they do with their hands? Do they have any kind of, weird quirks or something that could be put in there to show more personality or just more depth to them? But I don't really see a lot of that unless it's like something that is really important to them.
You know what's interesting is Bob actually brings up a really good point, and I think this is why these things get overlooked. Bob said, I try to avoid sleeping, eating, and weather because it becomes boring. Now in a story, if sleeping isn't integral to the character, like being a vampire or something like that, it's just like a normal thing. Eating, right, not part of the plot. And weather, it's just not important to the plot. How do we touch upon them without it boring the reader, right? Because then if you think about it from our standpoint, if you go a day without eating and sleeping, how are you going to feel tomorrow? If you go 2 days, 3 days without eating and sleeping, how are you going to feel?
Actually, I do reference that with my own characters. If they don't eat or sleep, I actually do show them having a reaction. Not in all of my stories, but I've had a fair amount where we don't know that the character's not sleeping, but suddenly they're stumbling because they're tired. Exhaustion is noticeable with them, or their stomach growls, or they like notice food more often in a way that it's like, okay, this is not just somebody being hungry. This is somebody who's actually not eating like consistently, not just like they skipped a meal or something. I do reference it, but it still kind of falls into the it's like a kind of a necessary thing though. But I do try to reference it at least sometimes with that. Exhaustion actually plays a huge part with mine.
I feel like then the challenge becomes, right, if it's not integral to the plot, how do you reference the things without boring the reader? Because like I don't know if you necessarily need to make sleeping, eating, sometimes weather. It doesn't always need to be part of the plot, especially if it's not integral to the story, but I think they still have to be referenced. But you don't just want to be like, all right, well, my characters ate a sandwich and then they went to bed, and then spend a couple paragraphs on them eating and sleeping when it's just going to be boring.
Say like after I had a good lunch, and then say what he does next on the adventure or something.
Or I would think about like yourselves, like everyone has a favorite food, right? So your characters must have a favorite food as well. I think you have to play into something that could be exciting or something that could be even comical, right? And then I think you have to try to play into that. Sleeping tends to usually lead into dream sequences, like 9 times out of 10 when people do sleeping or dreams, which it can be done. I know seems to be a back and forth on the effectiveness of dream sequences, That's always interesting to me.
I think
Calvin
that's a
mentioning,
story to story thing, though. It depends.
You
I
think
think
so?
that, at least personally, I think it's like if a dream is necessary to show
Mhm.
backstory, to show depth, for people who understand dream interpretation, that can actually be shown to show that the character has something they're not dealing with, and the dream is
Mhm.
telling them that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a story by story basis and a part by part basis.
Okay.
I personally don't use it at all in Pirates, but Kasai's mentioned of having nightmares, but we never actually see them.
By the way, Summers, Lauren, I saw you dropped in. By the way, welcome. Tiara, good to see you, my friends. Welcome, welcome. Calvin mentioned another really interesting one outside of eating and sleeping, bathing. Guys, if you don't go a week without taking a shower or bathing or a bath, how are you going to smell, and how are people going to react differently to you? Like, come on. Like
Guarantee that.
people will probably say something if you start smelling fresh. Your characters are going to be the same way. Like, how they would probably be the same way if they don't bathe, right? But I mean, granted, if you're like Lord of the Rings type story and you're running for your life and trying to survive, like, obviously, yeah, that's not a focus. But it's interesting. In trying to make your worlds and characters believable, these are still things that these are probably still things that they would have to think about at some point in time.
Be a
Yeah, I
quick
gotta
way
admit,
to
I
win a
probably
battle.
should have included bathing in mine, but they are pirates on a ship weeks at a time, so that was
But I
not a
think that's also part of the
priority.
culture. I think that's also part of the culture of pirates, right? That the bathing or lack thereof is a culture thing.
It's actually less of a culture thing. At least in my book, it's more of a what kind of ship do they have? Because Sonus's ship is like a typical wooden ship, but but they actually encounter somebody who has what would actually be considered a modern day ship. So they actually had like restrooms and showers and stuff. And there are ships like that, and there are even airships in the series that are mentioned that would have similar facilities. But for mine, it's not so much as culture, so much as they're on a wooden ship without electricity. So
that sounds funny, actually.
It's a quick way to win a battle if you don't bathe. Be like, all right, I'm going to oh gosh. Oh, I give up. You win. Take the castle. You win. I'm done.
But you see how that could be used to comedic effect for a character who intentionally doesn't bathe to use their odor to off-put people. But I mean, hey, if it saves that character from being killed, like that's kind of funny. That'd be an interesting character type.
oh god, I can actually see somebody using that now.
ML's like, I think that I often lean on sight and sound too much and have to work to get the other sense into the story during editing, which is interesting, right? Because bathing would really be smell, right? I think sight is the most one that's overused because it's the easiest. But then when we think about the other senses, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, I think those ones aren't always leveraged as much. Touch, maybe if you're describing the way things feel, but I could totally see that.
I think I actually overuse scent too often.
You said,
of course, I also deal with like a lot of animal characters, so I mean, it kind of makes sense that I use sense of smell, but I do tend to lean into it a lot heavier than I do touch. And sound is like I think I use scent the most, sound next, and then sight, and then after that would be touch and then taste.
Brain brought up a really good point. Brain was saying weather has so much to do with mood. In a film, for example, it's important, not always directly to the plot, but to the way something feels, food, bathroom, sleep. All happens in between ellipses, which you bring up a great point. If you watching a movie and it's a rainstorm, that's really that they're going for an intentional vibe there.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think I try to use weather to a similar effect in Scarecrow, even though like I know it's affected the world state. I feel like I use weather to create an either an atmosphere or an obstacle. But that's because my world is a fantasy post-apocalypse type world, so weather itself is the obstacle. But that's really interesting. Let's see. ML's like, my characters get pulled into the underworld while sleeping, so they sleep a lot in my story. But you say also like then that's also a storytelling mechanic, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like the characters need to go into the underworld to further the plot and further whatever's happening in the story. So that makes sense. Bob's
Yeah,
like, but when you read a book, do you worry if someone doesn't bathe, go to the bathroom, or eat? These are boring. I'd rather talk about what they're thinking about, emotion, and moving the story along.
I'm gonna have to kind of agree with Bob on that one. I don't really write too much about the bathing and all that. I do try to, like I do,
Mm-hmm.
like I did do a short dream sequence in the second Angel book, but other than that, for the most part, I kind of skip all that and just go with, the emotion and moving stuff along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation because then it makes me ask myself if we're absolutely like focusing on the plot, the character, the emotions, but if at some point you don't touch on the body habits and the day-to-day, will that affect the overall believability of a character? If you're reading through a 300-page story and the characters never eat, sleep, or bathe, does it make them feel like less believable? I don't know. I think it's just something that I pose. And once again, it's the readers who get to decide. It's readers who get to decide if they like the story and how they feel about the story. But just some things that kind of come to mind when I think about creating believable world, characters, etc. So I think this is a very great conversation. And I think it's very apt for me since I have to rewrite this scene. And I think the scene is leading to getting them some sleep. Which is kind of funny. So let's see, with where we're at on time, what we're going to do is we're going to pivot to a writing. We're going to get a writing sprint in. But before we do, let me pull up the writing sprint. If you are enjoying the stream, follow and subscribe. We're here every day with the Right Now community. Whether you're looking for daily writing motivation, you're looking for writers of all different skills and backgrounds, we have it all. We have writer interviews, writer technique streams, writing events. We just did our huge Right Now-a-thon a couple weeks ago where we had over 40 different authors involved, 60 plus events, and it was one of our most popular streams. So if you're looking for that help when you're feeling unmotivated, the Right Now community is the place to be. Make sure to tap that follow and subscribe button. And if you're already a subscriber, then click the share button and help us bring more authors to the community. All right, my friends, I appreciate y'all. Let's see, got to pull up In a Perfect World. I am already Soul and Crazy back. Bear with me un momento while I pull up the background. All right, and I think I got that here. It's like maybe. All right, here we go. So I think with what we're going to do, I got about, we'll do about 20 minutes. So we'll do a 20-minute sprint. We'll see what writing, we'll see what we can get through today. Let's see, I have mine. I'll pull it up here. So perfect. Awesome. So we'll do 20 minutes for our sprint. We'll see who can try to get some words in today, and we'll see what's possible. All right, my friends, whether you're brainstorming, writing, or editing, it's all part of the process. Come join us because it's time to write now. All right. And that was the writing sprint. How were you guys able to get some progress that time? How many words did you get in that writing sprint? Drop it down in the chat. What about you, Crazy? Were you able to make any progress?
Not really. My mind was too much on, okay, what story should I do next? Because I know I have 3 of them that I'm thinking about, and it's like, okay, what order should they go in? And so,
Okay,
didn't
so it
really
sounds like
write
you're
very
kind of
much.
getting more like brainstorming
Yeah,
and kind of like story development. Yeah, that totally happens. I was definitely getting some brainstorming in on my end. I pulled up the manuscript and then I'm just getting distracted with other administrative tasks.
yeah.
without Chino Chat Soul had to leave a little early. Without Chat Soul, there's nobody to compete against.
Oh no, what will happen to our friends?
Oh no, I'm sure Chat Soul will be back again soon. But Soul had to take off for the stream. Let's see. Megan got 248 words. Calvin got 310. Kevin, you got 412. ML, you're like, I wrote 2 paragraphs. Woo! That's awesome. Does it
Right
count if
on.
I got a bunch of words in for administrative stuff and emails? Brain's like, I did some world building, got some terms. Is that case, Calvin? Calvin, tonight we fight for the crown. I know. Oh, looks like Lynn. Oh, I think Lynn looks like you might. I think Lynn's Lynn, I think you're the winner of our of the writing sprint word count for the stream. Congrats. Like Lynn, you're getting 583. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Like Lynn, you got the word count master of the day, which is awesome. And yeah, you're like, Brain, but I had a really bad headache and it went away. Yeah, sometimes that happens. Like you try to sit down and write and then you're just not able to get anything.
Yeah.
Jody's like, edited a chapter. I feel like it's right. Yep. Megan's like, sprint 1 wins. Neat. Calvin, Lynn, we bow to your greatness.
Yes. Yes.
Bob's like 93 for my poem. Bob, I'm right there with you. Usually I'm like, all right, I got like 100 words and they were quality. Today I'm just getting distracted. Awesome, Kevin, welcome. So with that, we are actually going to be wrapping up. Like I shared in the beginning, today's writers group is a little shorter. We're actually hopping straight into our closed critique group. For anybody who is not already a YouTube channel member, there is the link. Essentially, we're going to be sharing each other's story excerpts and providing feedback in a group. If anybody wants to join the YouTube channel membership, right now we're starting in a few minutes. You just have to click the join button down below the YouTube channel. Right now for the YouTube channel membership, it's only $5, which is very cheap for a critique group. You're getting the cool icon next to your name as it evolves over time, emojis that represent yourself as an author, access to the Freaky Friday anthology for free, and then the critique group, like I said, which is currently in a trial period. The critique group is in a trial period because critique groups usually cost way more money. So $5 for a critique group to be able to get feedback on your story from others is pretty phenomenal. It's going to last a couple hours and we're starting in just a few minutes. So with that, I'm going to be wrapping up the stream. I know I see a couple of our channel members here in the chat, so I'm looking forward to seeing you guys over there. And Crazy, thanks for joining me today.
No problem.
Yourbomb.com. You always inspire me, my friend.
I do what I can.
I will be back next week with our next Right Now Writers Group. We'll be back to our normal 2-hour time slot. For those of you who are joining in the AuthorTube Marathon, we'll be back tomorrow for 2 hours of the next AuthorTube Marathon that the Right Now stream will be hosting. What was that, Thursday? I think we're at an earlier. Actually, I forgot. I was like, I don't even know what my own thing is. We're at some point tomorrow. Go check socials. That's we'll be back tomorrow for the AuthorTube Marathon. But it's been great, my friends. And that's all that I got for you. I'm Kaufman, and this is
Crazy Root Beer.
And we'll catch you on the next stream.
Right now.
Right
Right now.
Right now.
now.
Right now.
Right now.
Because it's time to write now.